I see others, reduced impact, hopefully also more awareness of climate and weather info. So that was probably one of the benefits that I missed previously. All right, so among the greatest challenges we have, oh, I still see some movement, forecast uncertainty, logistics, sustainability, local or national program ownership of the system coming out strongly. Don't see any others in the chat for now. But since I did just start recording, for those who might be watching this later, welcome to this community conversation, kind of taking stock of lessons learned so far. All right, well, thank you all for providing your input. That will be interesting background as we hear from our panelists. Let me get out of the screen now. Back to the Zoom. All right. So with that, I will hand over to Hafiz, who will be, the format will be that at first we are going to kind of propose 2 overarching questions to the 4 panelists that I introduced, and then we'll open it up to questions from the group. Of course, if you have something that comes to mind as someone is speaking, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try to monitor that, and we'll decide whether it makes more sense to bring it up at the end or as we go along. And yeah, then we will hear, and Eduardo will provide a bit of the kind of wrap up of the discussion. So Hafiz, without further ado.
Yeah, thank you, Arielle. So I will ask a few questions to the panelists, but before that, I am just telling the protocols for these questions. I will ask all the questions to all the panelists, but they will answer one by one. I mean, Sebongile and Benvindo, Damoda, and Beldemiro. But the question will be same, but we expect answers from each panelist one by one consecutively. So my first, I would like to start with Sebongile first. So Sebongile, can you hear me? Sebongile,
thank you. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. So the first question would be, so since you have been involved in anticipatory action programs, I hope it's since the beginning. So I would like to ask you about your experiences in developing anticipatory action in your country. Would you like to share some of your experiences with us? I mean, you can share with us some great success or benefits, I mean, opportunities or some challenges. Would you please share with us your experiences?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. I think I'll be talking on behalf of Lesotho in terms of our journey into the anticipatory action approach. I would say it was not an easy journey, but throughout all this journey, I think we have some factors that we can say we have benefited in all this overall approach. Firstly, in terms of benefits, I will mention that as key stakeholders in Lesotho, with our stakeholders' collaboration and engagement, it was easy to integrate the current AA approach into our current disaster risk reduction project. So it was easy for the stakeholders to have a buy-in in that. Again, from that, for us as a success, I would say we also have involving the academia into the process. We also had the opportunity for the National University of Lesotho to also have a new project, which is the 4As. So that is the major successes that we can mention in terms of having this approach in Lesotho. And in terms of the challenges, what I can mention as our major challenge was basically the issue of having access to data. We are aware that the model requires a lot of evidence-based data that we collect from different stakeholders. But because of our country and the protocols that we follow in order to have that access to that data, it was a bit difficult to have access to that data in a real-time manner. So with that, as a challenge mentioned of delay in access to data due to the existing policies and protocol, I would say going for in future, especially on what we have to work into or invest into anticipatory action, basically as to advocate for advocacy. Advocacy in a sense that when all stakeholders understand the approach and they live with the approach and they know what to be done in terms of the approach, it is easy for the government to secure such funds for different ministries, not only for the Disaster Management Authority or humanitarian organizations, but also for the overall different ministries that take part into the disaster risk reduction management. Again, it also brings again the issue of having easy access to the data without long protocols that have been followed. Thank you.
Hafiz, if you are speaking, you are muted.
Excuse me. Sorry. So thank you very much, Sebongile, for your nice response regarding the question. But now I forgot to mention the time. Actually, all the each panelist will get about 3 minutes, I think, Arielle, to respond to one question. I think 3 minutes. We have 25 minutes in total. Okay. So thank you, Sebongile, again for your nice response. So now I am going to Benvindo. The same question I am going to ask. Would you please share with us your experiences in developing anticipatory action in your country? Please, Ben, over to you, Benvindo. Can you hear?
Thank you very much. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I see that there are other specific questions coming, so I'm not going to get into details in terms of challenges and other stuff. But in general, I can say that from my personal perspective, my experience in Mozambique with working with anticipatory action has been fantastic, as this is an innovative approach in the country. We started engaging with the government of Mozambique almost 3 to 4 years ago for the first time to introduce the anticipatory action topic and to explain what does this mean and what are the benefits of adopting this innovative disaster risk reduction approach. The same thing we did within the WFP country office, because it's also a new approach to the WFP area in Mozambique. So it's been quite an interesting journey till date, because we also, as anticipatory action coordinators, focal points, we also have the obligation of learning and getting to hear new experiences every day. So we are better capacitated also to instruct the others. So the journey has been fantastic. The buy-in from the government in Mozambique has also been fantastic, as well as within the WFP country office, among other traditional disaster response units. So it was a bit of challenge in the beginning to try to explain that, look, anticipatory action is not coming here to compete with the traditional disaster risk response mechanism. By the contrary, it is coming to complement and to reduce the needs of the humanitarian needs of a disaster response program in general. So yeah, I would say that in very broad manner, this is what I have to tell. Maybe I will detail in other further questions with regards to challenges and to greatest achievements. Thank you. Over back to you.
Thank you, Benvindo. Uh, I'll be back to you again. So now I'm going to Damodar Canal. So Damodar, you have already heard the question. So again, I'm repeating. Just would you please share your experiences in developing anticipatory action in your country, focusing on its successes, challenges? Uh, please, over to you, Damodar.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So let me tell you, I have been involved with this anticipation since 2015 and three different contexts. In 2015, while we tried to introduce the concept of FPF for WFP in Nepal, and then kind of scaling up and consolidating the FPF momentum in Bangladesh, where we also had an opportunity to scale up anticipatory action, not only through Red Cross, but through UN instruments as well, using the SURF resources, where we also established the community of practice on FPF. And then moving further, I also have some experience working with anticipation in Southern African context, in Mozambique, Lesotho, and Namibia through GRC's German Red Cross Southern African FPF project. So three different contexts, three different experiences, and converging to the same experience I had over the years. So based on these three contexts, my experience is that the development of anticipatory action doesn't always follow a linear process. It's rather an iterative process and moves in a spiral. And the incremental gain or the progress when we talk as we move forward doesn't always be positive. So the key learning for me has been to have some patience and have tried to invest considerable time to develop the system, to test the system, and have the capacity in country to run and maintain the system. So that has been the biggest learning for me. And when we talk of the successes or benefit of anticipatory action that I have experienced so far, the biggest and the most important, I think, is the change in mindset and the culture that it has brought, the deliberation itself has brought among the humanitarian actors. We can already see a shift from response to willingness to anticipate risk and act ahead of crisis. So I think that's quite a great success that this movement, I would say, has brought in such a limited time frame. And other core benefits of anticipatory action or the system that we have developed include, like it has increased the efficiency of the response as well. The traditional response has also become faster and timely. And we already see like there's a better use of risk information and in DRM efforts in different countries. And another important co-benefit or the value I see is it has reinforced and reaffirmed the role and value of early warning system in saving lives and livelihoods, especially the importance of the end-to-end early warning system in different countries. So, and the other benefit I see is like the growth of the community itself, the anticipatory action community, and the diversity of stakeholders that have shown interest in this deliberation. One of my colleagues, Sebongile, was mentioning the increasing involvement of academia. I think private sector is also gradually coming up. So these are the benefits and successes of anticipatory action that I see based on my experience so far.
Would you like to, Damodar, would you like to say something about a challenge that you experienced in short?
Okay, sure. When we talk of the challenges, like based on my experiences and the failures, I would say one of the greatest challenges I see is related to the capacity to develop, implement, nurture, and sustain anticipatory actions in countries. And when I talk of the capacity, it's more of a localized capacity at the individual level, at the organizational level, and at an enabling environment level. That is what is lacking, or that is the greatest challenges that one of the challenges that I have struggled so far. And other important challenge is like, if you look into this movement, I would say the agenda of anticipatory action is still not driven by the national governments, I would say. In most of the countries, it's either Red Cross or it's UN or the INGOs who are leading this movement. And the government is kind of trying to follow up the pace, but I don't see like coming in the same pace. So that's the challenge. The challenge here is to have the government driving anticipated action and other stakeholders supporting the movement. So that's one of the challenges. And other challenge relates to scaling up of anticipatory action. We still do not have compelling cases that demonstrate success of anticipatory action at scale. So there are island of successes, but when we talk of the needs, there are continents. So we still need to demonstrate and have compelling cases that demonstrate anticipatory action can be scaled up at scale.
Okay, thank you, Damodar. I will come back to you again to hear something more. So now I would like to ask the same question to Baldemiro. Baldemiro, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Baldemiro, sir, would you please share your experiences in developing a anticipatory action in your country, please?
Thank you, Hafiz. As we Red Cross, Mozambique Red Cross, we started developing reaction protocol in the country in 2015 to 2017. We call it the first phase. I will divide this my experience into phases. The first one we call the pilot phase. It was during 2015 to 2017, and it baseline was conducted in Zambezia and Gaza. And this period was produced two protocols. In that time, they called standard operation procedure. And we did one simulation in Mokuba. And in that time, our trigger was composite. We used the wind and wind speed, yes, and rain to use it as the trigger. And for floods was 80 meters. So we call it the phase that the Mozambique Red Cross was advocate period for FBF mechanism. And after this phase come another that started at 2018 to 2020. This phase, Mozambique Red Cross used the experience that gained in lesson learning in phase one. And the first one, they changed the approach. In that time, the AIP was developed in the regional scale. And another phase, Mozambique Red Cross developed or changed this approach to avoid activation protocol if the events in a region not completed this event condition and being able to support. And the other thing that Mozambique Red Cross introduced was to introduce of scientific research actor like university consultants to conduce baseline and post-activation monitoring. And this period was defined the threshold thinking account and historical data, whose return period was 5 years. The biggest success has been rising reducing costs, in some cases responding immediately to the community. Thank you. Over to you, Raman.
Thank you very much, Valdemiro. So, so again, I am coming back to Sebongile to ask some different questions. Actually, you may not consider it a question since all of us are sharing our experiences. So now it's about your opinion. So Sebongile, I am going to start with you again. So if it were up to you to decide, so where would you choose to focus your efforts or investment with a view to further improving the feasibility of anticipatory action in your country? Though anticipatory action is already on the path of development or it's improving day by day, but yet what would you do to further improve the feasibility of anticipatory action in your country? Just share your opinion. Sebongile, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. In terms of what I hope could be done in terms of improving anticipatory action in Lesotho, I'll start first by saying it is still a new approach in Lesotho with Red Cross and WFP just started it a few years back, so it's still new. And it's still very difficult for most local stakeholders to understand what it intends to do. So the first hope that I would have is to have more advocacy on anticipatory action and how it can benefit the country as a whole. Again, what apart from the capacity, and I would think the next one would be if we have enough advocacy. We are aware that the government of Lesotho already have the contingency funds for a normal response project, or mainly for the response. Then even with more advocacy, we can have as a country, we can have we can encourage the government to have those funding that can be kept mainly for anticipatory action. Thank you.
Thank you. Benvindo, so where will you put more focus, to further improve the feasibility of anticipatory action in your country, if it's up to you to decide?
Thank you. Well, I will start by doing a general, let's say, a response with regards to the main achievements in Mozambique, which will also answer to this question. So we as WFP in Mozambique, we have managed to get the buy-in of the government and to integrate anticipatory action in what we call national contingency plan. So for 2 years in a row now, including this current year, the anticipatory action approach has been integrated into the government national contingency plan. So we consider this as one of the biggest achievements in country, because this is what is going to ensure the sustainability and also the feasibility of implementing anticipatory actions in Mozambique. Because if the government assumes anticipatory action as part of its own government program, this means that part of the funds of the regular contingency funds will be allocated to this area as well. As we speak, the government is revising the SOPs of the implementation of the what we call disaster management fund in order to ensure that a percentage of the state budget is yearly allocated to the implementation of anticipatory action. So this is what WFP has been working on with supporting the government of Mozambique, and this is considered to be one of the biggest challenges of our work up to date. And this is what, now going to your question, I think this is what is going to ensure the feasibility of implementing anticipatory actions in country, and also allow its sustainability in terms of feasibility and mobilizing funds from other cooperating partners and the donor communities in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Benvindo. So, Damodar, where would you like to focus your efforts or investment to further improve the feasibility of anticipatory action? Would you please share your opinion?
Sure.
Damodar.
Thank you, Hafiz. I would focus my energy and resources and effort as well to develop capacities, to strengthen coordination, to work together, and to build synergy, I would say. When I talk of building capacities, I would want to further zoom down and decentralize the whole capacity development efforts in the country, from region to countries, from countries to provinces, from provinces to districts, and from districts to communities. And when I talk of capacity development, it's more at the individual level in terms of enhancing skills and knowledge required for anticipation. At organizational level, in terms of having organizational policies, practices, and procedures better matching and aligning to the needs of anticipatory action, and also at the level of enabling environment at a broader level that can create a conducive environment for the anticipatory action to grow and sustain. So this is about capacity development. And I would also like to focus on better coordination. And here I especially want to recognize the importance of breaking the silos and working together, not only in the workshops, but in real activations on real grounds as well. And also looking into ways how we can better anchor anticipatory action in overall DRM and DRR architecture. I don't know how to, but I would wish to see countries having national DRR, DRM frameworks that incorporate a range of actions and actors seamlessly from preparedness till response and recovery, and anticipatory action having its unique position there in the spectrum, and this process being led by the government. Over to you, Hafiz.
Thank you very much. Beldemiro, so you have heard the question actually. So would you please share your opinion? Where would you choose to focus your efforts to further improve anticipatory actions feasibility in your country?
Thank you,
Beldemiro.
Hafiz.
Yeah.
My efforts goes to first for coordination, and second one, building capacity in designing general SOP for all. My dream is to have only protocols for country, and the other partner use the same early action protocol. The other thing is to focus on the early warning system, to speak about two elements, risk knowledge and dissemination in communication. I think there is a needs for impact-based financing to give a population possibility, the opportunity to measure the possible impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Beldemiro. So so far we have received valuable learnings and lessons from those from our panelists. But now I would like to go back to Arielle to address some of questions. I hope some of our audiences, they have put different questions in chat box. Those who would like to ask the questions in person, this is you are most welcome. But please, Arielle, it's over to you to address those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hafiz, and thank you all for kind of providing some rich experience that fleshes out some of these questions about the challenges and the opportunities and room for future investment in a way that is not possible in an article, for example. That's why we wanted to have this conversation, and it's been really interesting to hear your responses. So I did see, though there's been kind of a conversation going on in the chat, it would be interesting to kind of open that up to everybody. So Jeremiah, I don't know if you want to ask a few of your questions for Benvindo and Sebongile, and then we can see if others also want to chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Arielle. Are you asking me to ask the question in vocal here? Yes.
Yeah, so that everybody can kind of benefit from the response, and perhaps we'll see if it will spark some additional discussion.
Sure, thank you. Benvindo, thank you for your response in the chat box there. The question that I had for Benvindo to the group here was, it sounded like I understood there was perhaps some misconceptions within the government, and I was curious which programs those misconceptions were, that AA anticipatory action work might be a threat to existing disaster risk reduction or response work. And I was just curious what programs, if that was sort of generally wide government programs, or if there were specific programs where there was perhaps that misconception. And then the follow-up to that was, if so, how did you overcome these misconceptions?
Thank you. If I may come in.
Please.
Thanks. So yeah, as written on the chat, yeah, at the beginning there was a misconception, not only by the government but by everyone in the country, because this was the first time that we were talking about anticipatory action, and nobody knew anything about this, apart from a few experiences that most of the people have heard. But in general, there was a misconception with how to link anticipatory action with the current or traditional disaster response programs. How does anticipatory action fit into the disaster risk management cycle in country? So we used experiences from other countries that have already implemented anticipatory actions. So we brought in some data also to back up that investing in anticipatory action would benefit by reducing the humanitarian needs. So if you put some money in investing in an anticipatory action, so you would probably be saving this amount of money if you were to go with a traditional normal disaster response program. But also, on the other hand, what we invested a lot in is what the government capacity building. So we invested a lot in building the capacity of the technical staff of the government to understand what is anticipatory action and what is the advantage of adopting or implementing anticipatory action, and how does it fit into the broad disaster risk management cycle. So this has been the strategy that we've been using in Mozambique to date. Of course, today we are in a better stage, but as I mentioned in my first intervention, this is a new topic that every day we are all learning, and we need to keep a common understanding and up to speed with regards to the involvement of the area itself. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now, Jeremy also had another question for Sebongile, but if somebody else would like to chime in before we get to that, if somebody has questions, you can feel free to raise your hand, unmute. All right, well, if not, then maybe something will occur to people.
There was a hand up. I think Hannes.
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering to all of you in what way you are introducing NGOs, like international NGOs, but also local NGOs into your work, and what the benefits and challenges of that are.
Thank you, Hannes. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. Would any one of you like to begin? Is that something that you have started to think about or actually had some experience in? Sebongile, is that something that you have done in Lesotho?
Arielle, maybe if you repeat the question, Hannes' connection was not very strong, so it broke up a little bit.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so the question was how, if at all, you all have attempted to bring local NGOs, kind of incorporate them into your work, introduce them to the topic, correct? Yeah. So do any of you have any experience with that? Damodar, please.
Thank you, Hannes. I think STAT network, who is the network that is operational in many countries, I think that has more to do with including NGOs in the movement. But based on my experience in Bangladesh, what we tried to do was we tried to establish a community of practice on FPF. We constituted a FPF working group where we brought together not only the Red Cross and UN, but the government and NGOs as well, because NGOs bring a unique strength that others might lack in terms of having a deep penetration to the communities. And I see a biggest strength of NGOs in this movement in terms of facilitating and encouraging locally led early actions that not necessarily rely on a flow of funds from above. So they could, the NGOs and CBOs could facilitate locally led anticipatory actions that could rely on funds that are available at the local level or could be at a very minimal cost. Over.
Bem-vindo, do you have something that you would like to add?
Yeah, just to complement on Damodar's intervention in Mozambique, we have also supported the creation of what we call National Anticipatory Action Technical Working Group. And last year, we organized the first civil society organization dialogue platform in anticipatory action, where we brought up all relevant NGOs that work with anticipatory action in country. And the strategy or the idea is to have the NGOs also take the lead, because they are the ones who have more presence in the local communities, have them taking the lead either in terms of mobilizing funds for the implementation of anticipatory action, but also being part of being an implementation hand of anticipatory action. For instance, in WFP's interventions, we always work with NGOs with implementing our normal response programs on the ground. So we want to keep this relation with the NGOs, take the advantage that we already have agreements and MOUs with them, and incorporate the anticipatory action approach into these programs, which means that whenever there will be an anticipatory action or trigger activation in country, we are going to channel the funds for the implementation by the NGOs who lead at local level. So just wanted to add on that. Thank you.
Great, I've seen some agreement from Vladimir and Damodar, and I also see Caroline adding in the chat that the national dialogue platforms for anticipatory action also often, invite civil societies, actors and NGOs to come to them. And so that's a good opportunity for them to either share their experience if they are already involved, or to become introduced to the topic if they are relatively new. Would somebody else like to add on that? Do you have any follow-ups, Hannes? Okay.
No, thanks.
No problem. If nobody else wants to ask their, Larissa, feel free to unmute.
Hi, I hope you can hear me properly. So I was wondering, it's a question partially related to the current situation, but also to the future. I know many of you work in situations that are sometimes unstable. In what sense is the conflict discussion already included on the national level? Are the national levels considering working in the real unstable context within the countries? I would like to hear more about this. Thank you.
And to Bem-vindo, Damodar, Sebongile, Vladimiro, feel free to just unmute and respond if you have anything to say, or just to say that perhaps that hasn't been considered yet. I know at the
Well, I think that's a very important question. At German Red Cross, what I can say at the moment is we are still exploring anticipated action in fragile conflict and violent setting. So that's one of the areas that we want to focus on, how to implement anticipated actions in conflict setting. It won't mean working on conflict, but working in conflict. How do we best implement anticipated actions in conflict and other settings? We still are trying to accumulate experiences and learning so that we can have a robust program going on there. So that's all for now.
Bem-vindo, I believe that's a new hand.
Yes, thank you. In Mozambique, well, you might know that there is a conflict ongoing in the north of the country in a province called Cabo Delgado for 5 years now. So WFP has secured funds to focus on the implementation of anticipatory actions in conflict-affected areas. We have, together with the government of Mozambique, organized and the Red Cross, Valdemiro is here and was present in the event, thanks to him as well. We together organized the first workshop to launch this project. So this would be an expansion of the implementation of anticipatory action to a multi-hazard context, also looking into conflict-affected areas. So currently we are working with the academia in order to design the terms of reference that will conduct the elaboration of a case study of which will inform about the feasibility of implementing anticipatory actions in conflict affected areas. So firstly, we want to understand what are the risks, what are the challenges, what would be the benefit, the added value of implementing anticipatory actions to support conflict affected population. And then after this study is concluded, this is going to inform on how we should adjust our regular SOPs with a focus to conflict affected areas. So this is an area that we are already working on in Mozambique, and we hope to share concrete analysis and information as soon as possible. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Benvinda. Very good to know that that's going on. And I believe, Caroline, you might be adding what you were going to say in the chat and what, so go ahead.
No, sorry, I actually had a different question.
Oh, okay, then let me just say that, because one of the things that came to mind as well is that there is a conflict working group through the Anticipation Hub. So if you haven't already been connected to that, Caroline actually posted a link to it in the chat, and that would be a good resource. There are people who have been thinking about it. I don't know how far along they are in the actual like implementation piece of it. And so then Caroline, go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, it's a new question. Is that okay? Yeah. Yes, to all the panelists, I had a question because I think it was one of the challenges that was also highlighted in the survey about, which early actions to choose. And from my experience has been often that, when we start out anticipatory action, there's a really long list of like all the things we would like to do between, getting a early warning and then the impact of a disaster. But then often we have challenges because of the lead time. So, maybe we only have a few days or, maximum like a few weeks if it's a drought. And then like the ability and operational capacity to do all these activities in a short time. So I just wanted to hear from you, like what has been your experience in like trying to kind of decide, how to select early actions and then like to build the capacity of the national societies to be able to actually implement them in a really short time frame.
Thank you, Caroline. That's certainly something that came through strongly in our interviews, the wider Red Cross community. Would any of you like to try to respond to that?
Thank you. I think I will try to respond to that, looking at the Lesotho Red Cross context. Maybe to agree that as we started, we had a very long list of early actions that we wanted to do. But then we had to sit down again with stakeholders and the Red Cross to say which early actions can we prioritize now? Because now we were looking at two components, our capacity as the Lesotho Red Cross and the capacity of the government that will be basically supporting us in implementing these early actions to say what capacity do we have as Lesotho Red Cross and what capacity do these stakeholders have. So that was the first one that we used. The second one, we were also looking at our funding. We would have wished to do so many things, but again, the issue of having enough funding to do all those early actions was the second one. And lastly, the issue of the lead time again also came into place to say we can have so many, but in terms of the lead time, which ones were basically visible, and that helped us a lot to reduce the current early actions from the list that we had before to have a few that we have today. Thank you. I hope it has answered your question.
If anyone else would like from anywhere, I mean, this is meant to be a conversation, so if there are other people that also want to join in, it doesn't need to necessarily only be the panelists. But also, if there isn't another question, Jeremiah, you did have a question for Sebongile that we have not yet gotten to. So if you'd like to ask that, please feel free.
Thank you, Arielle. I did see Damodar had a hand up maybe to respond to that question from Larissa. Did I see that?
Yep, I can come in briefly. I just wanted to reinforce and add on to what Sebongile said. Like, based on my experience, we tend to be quite ambitious in terms of like listing the early actions at the beginning, and as we move through, then we really come into size. And based on my experience, what we have done so far is like use a number of criteria to further funnel down the early actions that we develop as a part of wish list. And also stakeholder consultation also plays quite a role there in terms of shaping the early actions that we can think of. And when I talk of the criteria, I think for me, like in most of the cases, the lead time has been one of the most important ones, because that defines the frame and scope of the actions. And secondly, the unique strength of the organization, like the Red Cross has its unique that's a unique selling point, and UN has different, and the NGOs have different. So their comparative advantage or the strength also plays quite a role in terms of shaping the early actions that organizations choose, and also the operational feasibility. So these three criteria have, like, I have come up with these in most of the instances. Over.
Great, thank you. Now, unless I'm missing another hand, we'll go to one last question, and then I will hand over to Eduardo to kind of provide some wrap-up thoughts. Jeremiah, did you want to ask your question, or?
Sure. Is this the one that you had mentioned that
Yeah.
maybe Sebongile would answer? Okay, thank you. Yeah, this question was for Sebongile, but for any of the others that have also had this similar experience. Sebongile, if I understood correctly, you were indicating that there was some difficulty among stakeholders, at least initially, in seeing the value of funding anticipatory action work. And I was curious if that was sort of just difficulty in general in seeing it, or was it difficulty in seeing the value as opposed to some other program or work that also needed funding? So it was like a competing funding thing, and there's little in the way of funding, we have to figure out which one to put it in, or was it difficulty in general in seeing the value of AA work? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would say it's a difficulty in general, maybe for us, because when we talk of anticipatory action in Lesotho, we only have 2 years talking about it, which is still new to all our stakeholders. And maybe to say, even to date, we have not activated any early action protocol. So to the stakeholders, you find that it's still a debate of, can this work? Can this be funded? So currently you find that I would say there's that slight competition which we still have, where the stakeholders still think it is best to fund the response part because they've seen the evidence of that. But for this one of the AA, since we have not activated any early action protocol, it becomes more of a difficult. But in terms of the value, yes, they can see the value, but I think the problem here would be the evidence to see it working in practice, and we hope to see it soon. So I think that's why I said it also calls again to ensure that we have the advocacy so that they see more benefit of providing funds for that.
Thank you very much. So thank you all for your questions and this discussion. I'm now going to hand over to Eduardo just to make some kind of final links to some of the things that we found in our research and maybe some closing thoughts before we let you go.
Thank you, Arielle. Well, we did have a very interesting discussion, and it was mostly referring to Southern Africa countries where good experience were shared in developing anticipatory action, such as the development of standard SOPs and the government involvement, the strengthening of early warning system, the use of research-based data linked to simulation, and also the creation of technical working groups for FBF. Yet, the following challenges were also raised: data availability, governmental leadership, and the need of scale-up anticipatory action. It's interesting that most of what was here discussed is somehow related with our article, as one of our main findings is that most of FBF projects are most of FBF initiatives are project-oriented, and they lack governmental involvement and leadership. And also, to conclude, the following opportunities were raised: the need of stronger coordination, capacity strengthening, considering FBF for conflict scenarios, and also the need of reinforced visibility. So this is how I think that we can sum up what was discussed in this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all again for your attendance and your active participation. It was really great to see this turnout, and also to see everyone thinking about it and asking excellent questions. I definitely heard a few points, particularly regarding the experience from WFP in Mozambique that I hadn't heard before, and really appreciated it. So thank you all. Please feel free to reach out and keep sharing your experiences. And this recording will go up on the web, so you can share with those who might not have been able to make it. So with that, I wish you all a good day, evening, middle of the night, whatever the case may be, wherever you are. And thank you very much, panelists, for taking the time to share your experiences. That was, of course, essential.
And thank you very much. Thank you, Arielle,
Yeah.
Jeremiah, Damodar. So this is the first time. Damodar, I saw you, right?
I think we met somewhere.